Hi everybody, Dan Bailey here with some more Fujifilm camera tips for you. Before I get started, I just wanted to let you guys know about my Photography on the Brain video lesson series. In this exclusive series, I explore photography and creativity on a more cerebral and thought-provoking level than I often do here on the YouTube channel, which is a little bit more tips-based. My Photography on the Brain lessons will challenge you to push your own creativity and your own image making to new heights so that you can become a more confident and creative artist. If you want to check that out, you can follow this link and get a 50% discount on my 20 lesson bundle. Okay, let's dive into today's lesson. All of the X series camera models feature a number of programmable function buttons and controls that allow you to customize the camera according to your own personal style of shooting. I consider this to be one of the most powerful aspects of these cameras because they allow you to quickly access the often used settings you like to use with a single tap or swipe of your thumb or a finger without having to dig in the menus and spend a lot of time looking for any particular setting. And so for this reason, these function buttons give the Fujifilm cameras a high degree of streamlined usability and efficiency. If you've poked around the menus, you've probably noticed that there's over 100 different settings on these cameras. And most of them are designed to solve a very specific problem, give you a very specific creative look or style to your photos, or give you greater efficiency when using the camera in a specific situation. A few of them you might use on a regular basis, and some less often, or some not at all. However, each of them adds a certain level of power and performance to the camera, which in the end will make you a better and more efficient shooter. Of course, not everyone has the same shooting style, so again, that's why Fuji allows you to customize these function buttons and set them up in a way that matches your own style or the types of subjects that you like to shoot. Most of the newer Fuji models have 7 or 8 different buttons that you can customize to set different functions. The touchscreen models add 4 left, right, up, down swipe gestures, which also can be set to different functions. And so this gives you a total of 11 possible function settings on the X Pro 3, 13 on the X-T3, and 14 on the X-T4. Even the little X100V has 10 programmable function controls. And depending on the camera, you have at least 50 different possible settings that you can apply to these function buttons. The X-T4 comes in at the top with 60 different possible settings you can assign. So no matter which Fuji model you have, to see what you have available and to set these function buttons, simply press and hold the display back button on your camera and you'll bring up the function button assign menu. And from there, simply choose the button you want to change, hit OK, and scroll down through the list until you see the setting that you want to apply to that button or control. So how should you set your function buttons up? Good question. The answer kind of depends on what model you're using, but more importantly, it depends on your own particular shooting style and the kinds of subjects you like to capture. Now, every single model comes with a default function button layout. Now, I actually recommend leaving them at the default settings to start because these settings have been mapped out to match the capabilities of the specific camera you're using. And they're pretty well thought out. So in other words, get to know your camera first before you start changing anything. See what each function button does and think about how you might be able to use it in your own photography. Or think about if you think it's going to be useful for the kind of things you'd like to shoot. In the meantime, scroll through those options and see what else is there. And if there's a particular setting assigned to a function button that you don't think is going to be very useful or that you don't find yourself using very often, then go ahead and assign something different to that button. And as with anything on these cameras, the more you shoot and the more you practice and the more you get to know these settings, the more you'll be able to use these function buttons to your advantage. To give you an idea of how this works, I'm going to share with you the specific settings that I have assigned on my function buttons on my X-T3 and X-T4. So on my X-T3, and I actually did this on my X-T2 as well, one of the first things I do, is kind of my own personal customization, is I set the AFL button out here to be a second playback button. So then my camera actually has 2. I've got one over here and one over here. And this just helps me quickly review images if I'm shooting one-handed, which I often do. So I can just simply hit that second playback button with my thumb. The second one I have is the AEL button, the exposure lock button. Now on my cameras I have that set to a shutter type. There's a lot of times where I go back and forth between the mechanical and electronic shutters, and so that just gives me a quick way to access that menu. Next, we've got the 4 thumb pad buttons over here below the joystick. The left one I have set to film simulations. I'm changing my film simulations all the time, every time I shoot. And having it right there underneath my thumb allows me to quickly select those when I'm out shooting. The right thumb pad button I have set to white balance. And actually those two, the film simulations and the white balance, left and right, are the default settings for the camera. So I've kept those the way they were originally programmed. The bottom thumb pad button I have set to AFC custom settings. So when I'm shooting action, I can quickly adjust how the camera acquires and tracks moving subject matter in continuous autofocus. And finally, the top thumb pad button I have set to RAW. In one of my previous lessons, I've talked about the benefits of shooting JPEGs on the Fuji cameras. So most of the time I'm shooting JPEG on my X series, but sometimes I shoot RAW. So if I come across a scene that I feel will be better served shooting RAW, I'll hit that button. And the next frame will capture a RAW image. It will actually capture RAW plus JPEG because that's how I have it set. So in this way, shooting RAW is a conscious decision for me. It's not the default. My default shooting is JPEG because the JPEGs that come out of these cameras are amazing. And I love the way they look. Now moving on to the front function button, I leave this at the default. On all the XT models, the default is set to drive settings. And this is where you quickly access all your bracketing settings, you can change your advanced filters, and you can adjust your frame rate when shooting continuous low or high modes on the camera. Now most of the non-XT models like the X Pro series, the XE, and the X100 series actually have a dedicated drive button already on the camera. And so this is where you'll find all that stuff. So if you have one of those non-XT models, you don't need to set drive settings to another function button because you already have that drive button right there at your fingertips. On the top, you have the Wi-Fi button, and this allows you to quickly connect the camera to your mobile device like your tablet or your phone when you want to transfer photos back and forth. So the Wi-Fi function is already set by default to this button, but you can actually assign another function to it as well, because the Wi-Fi setting only works when you're actually in playback mode and reviewing images. So for shooting mode, you can assign something different. So I currently have mine set to face detection. Now there are some times where I'm photographing people and I want to use that face detection because it's quick. It's a quick way to acquire the subject. But sometimes I want to turn it off because I've seen it get fooled a number of times in nature. Maybe a tree trunk or a rock or something in the landscape will fool the camera and it thinks it's seeing a face. And maybe that's not what I want to focus on. So I can turn that off and disable that with just a quick tap of the button. So now let's talk about the swipe gestures. That adds 4 additional function controls right on the touchscreen. So one thing to keep in mind, if you want this to work, you have to go into the button dial settings menu and enable the touch function control to on. And once you do that, you can swipe up, you can swipe down, left and right. So I've got mine set up for histogram, swipe up and it's gone again. Swipe down, I've got the electronic level, swipe it down again. My left swipe is set to pre-shot ES, and that just toggles that setting on or off. Now, in order for pre-shot ES to work, I have to be in continuous mode and have the electronic shutter set. So again, I've got my electronic shutter right here accessed from the AEL button, and I can change that right there. And then I can quickly just go back and swipe left to toggle the pre-shot ES on and off. Now, if you haven't seen my pre-shot ES video, you can check that out right here. It's a really cool setting. I think it's one of the most powerful settings on these cameras for helping you shoot action and capturing fast-breaking scenes. And finally, my swipe right, right now I've got it select custom settings. I also have another video that shows you how to create these custom recipes which you can store in the Q menu in the camera. And so with this I can swipe right and scroll up or down or scroll with the touch screen or the joystick here and choose one of those. And that just saves time from having to actually go into the Q menu and select them from there. Now there's 2 more function buttons that you might find on your camera. The first is the rear command dial. When you press that in, that becomes a function control. And I have mine set to focus check. So if I have the camera set to manual focus mode, I can press the rear command dial and it'll zoom in so I can get a better judge of what's in focus in my scene. Likewise, if I'm playing back an image, I can press that back and it'll instantly zoom to the point of focus that was established in the shot. And that brings up another point. You can also set the functions up so that you can touch screen left and right to scroll through your already shot images on the card. And you can also pinch to zoom and scroll around and scroll back and forth. So pretty handy. And on some models, like the XT4, I think the XT30 has this, the X100V, the Q button is actually programmable. You can leave it as a Q button to access the Q menu, or you can set it as a function button, or you can disable it. And the reason they did this was because on some of the models, the Q button is out here at the edge, and some people were accidentally hitting it with their heel of their palm when they were pressing, when they were holding the camera. So if you have a Q button out at the edge and you accidentally press that when you're holding the camera, you might want to disable that. And you do it in the same place. Hold the display back button until you bring up the menu for your function settings, just scroll down, and then when you reach the Q button, just hit disable or hit nothing. So on my cameras, I keep my Q button set to access the Q menu, but you can change it or you can disable it entirely. But the main thing to remember is that there's so many options and there's no perfect combination. The best mapping for these function buttons is going to depend on your own style and what you like to shoot and how you like to manipulate the camera with your hands and your fingers. And it might depend on what you're shooting on any given day. You might change it before and after each shoot. Also, if you shoot video, you might want to add a few of the video specific settings to those function buttons. If you regularly shoot with flash, especially inside, then you might want to set one of your function buttons to the preview, exposure, white balance, and manual mode setting. You'd want to turn that setting off if you're shooting with flash and using a higher sync speed, because that would allow you to clearly see your subject in the viewfinder. And then for regular shooting without a flash, you can simply hit that and toggle it back on. So again, with so many combinations, customizing the function buttons on your camera is going to be a matter of experimentation and figuring out your own camera workflow based on what you like to shoot or based on what you're shooting on any given day. In fact, I would recommend revisiting this menu on a regular basis. And if there's a function button that you're not using very often, change it to something else. Or if there's a setting that you find yourself wanting more often, pull that into your mapping. But the bottom line is that using these function buttons and these function swipe gestures, if you have the touch screen, is going to help make your photography workflow that much more efficient, so you can take care of these tasks and adjust your settings quickly and spend most of your energy focusing on the creative aspects of photography instead of digging in the menu going, oh wait, how do I find that setting? Oh wait, down, scroll down. Oh wait. Oh, hey wait, can you do that again? So I hope you found this to be a helpful tutorial. If you are a Fuji shooter, you'll definitely want to check out my best-selling ebook, X Series Unlimited. This 400-page guide will help you get the best performance and have the most fun with your Fuji camera. So thanks for watching this video. Please leave a comment. Please share with your friends. You can find me on social media and Patreon at Dan Bailey Photo, and you can visit my blog and website as well. So take care, have fun with your Fuji, and I'll see you next time.